Welcome to the Fundraising Elevator, where we're all headed up. This podcast is a production of ElevateNonprofit.com, an online learning platform for fundraising event professionals. We're coming to you today from the studios of the AV department. Please welcome our hosts, Kristen Steele and Samantha Swaim.
Today's a great day at the Fundraising Elevator. We're very excited to be talking to a dear friend. A lot has changed in funding resources in the nonprofit sector and in the grant world. And so it was sort of the topic of we need to make sure this season that we're talking about grants and how they've evolved. And there's no better person to invite than our dear friend Susan Taylor with the Grant Lab, who is doing so much to support nonprofits in their grant process. So we're excited today to learn from you, to talk to you a little bit about what's evolved in the sector with grants and grant writing and what's new. Welcome to the show. We're glad you're here.
Thank you so much. I'm absolutely delighted to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, let's do an official introduction so people know a little bit more about you. Kristen, I'll turn it over to you.
Great. Susan Taylor is the principal advisor and founder of the Grant Lab, a consulting firm that helps nonprofit organizations identify grant opportunities they're eligible for, craft effective grant proposals, and build relationships with funders to assure a thriving community. Susan, thanks for being here.
Thanks again.
So let's start at the very beginning, because I don't want to make a lot of assumptions about the knowledge people come into this conversation with.
Yeah.
We also have so many new people in the sector. That's one of the constants, right? We've seen a lot of flow in and out of the sector, pandemic, sort of in the waves after the pandemic. So let's start at the beginning. What is a grant? And where might folks be able to secure a grant from?
That's a great question. I get so high up, sometimes I forget, like, oh, what is a grant exactly? Grants come from a couple of different places, but mostly grants are funding awards. They come from philanthropic organizations and federal agencies. And usually you have to apply for a grant through a grant application or grant proposal process. And that is the crux of grant writing. That is what we do. Grants are part of an overall fundraising strategy, right? So they don't do everything, but neither does major gifts and neither do your events. All of these things together weave together this quilt of your overall fundraising strategy. And they're really important sometimes for getting matching funds, for startup funds for a new project, and sometimes grants can even fund general operating, which is great. I want to point out there's a really different skill set for writing philanthropic foundation grants and writing federal or state grants.
Oh, interesting.
It's just a different skill set. It's a different strategy. But both are really valid components of that fundraising strategy. So foundation grants can be more relational. Often they're a lot easier to write. They're more personal, and you have a little bit more leeway. Federal grants can be very intense. They're extremely technical. Sometimes a federal grant will be, 50, 100, 150 pages long. They just take a really long time to write them, but often there's more money associated. So, I'm sure a lot of your listeners are familiar with fundraising events. And, when I listen to your podcast talk about everything that goes into a fundraising event, all those same components have to go into a grant proposal as well.
Yeah.
It's not just you sit down and you write a grant and then you submit it and that's it. There is a whole overarching strategy that goes into it. It follows these same principles, right? You build relationships. You have a story arc. You have this overall strategy of what you're trying to accomplish. It's kind of like fundraising events for introverts. That's what I like to call it.
Yes. Oh my God, I love that so much.
The t-shirt today.
I know. Grants, fundraising events for introverts.
That's amazing.
Well, Susan, I think it might blow people's sort of minds a little bit to understand philanthropic organizations, because so often new nonprofits are started in one of two routes. Either they're started because someone saw a need and wanted to address that need, and they're like, I'm going to start an organization around this need. Or they're started out of a government entity saying, this community has a need, so we're going to launch an initial funding source that starts the nonprofit, and then over time, the nonprofit grows. But for those like families with an idea or entrepreneurs with an idea that start a nonprofit, I think oftentimes there is a big question in this sector of, I don't understand how the work gets supported and funded. We talk often about individual giving, major donor giving,
Right.
but philanthropic organizations, I think, kind of come in two frames. They're often either corporations that have started a giving arm, or they're individuals that have started a giving process because they have wealth capacity and they want to be able to give back to the community. So when you talked about them being very different, whether you're applying for a federal grant or you're applying for a family or a foundation grant, what does the grant process look like these days? How are sort of you approaching that process and moving forward with application?
Well, that's a big question.
It is, yes. Might in fact be the question.
It is. It really is. I mean, I think about writing grants, again, in a lot of the same way that when you want your guests to come into a room in a fundraising event, you want them to say, wow, or you want them to end the night thinking, I learned something really interesting that I didn't know about, and I want to be part of that. And that's what you're trying to do with grants as well, right? You're trying to surprise your readers, not too much, but you want to educate them, right?
No cardiac episodes.
Yeah, exactly. Don't try and get cute with it, right? Just tell them, here's the story, right? Here's why we started as a nonprofit. Here was the need we saw, and here's how we're trying to work on it. Here's how we're bringing in partners. Here's how we work in community with others, and here's some others who are supporting it. Sometimes you only have 500 characters to explain all of that.
Oh, wow.
Which is really hard. So you have to be incredibly intentional with the language that you use and the words, and how are you capturing their attention? Because oftentimes readers, at a family foundation or, volunteer reviewers at a state agency, they might have a stack of 25 grant applications that they have to finish reading by the end of the day to make the decision about which one of these or which 5 of these gets $10,000 or $50,000 or $200,000. And you might not have the kind of space that you would have, in a major gift relationship to explain, here's everything we do. And we had 500 characters to do it. So you need to capture their attention. You need to bring them along. It's an invitation, right? We're inviting you to join us in this partnership where we're trying to solve this issue, and you can help. And this is how you're going to come along with us. And together we can solve this issue. And this is how we're going to do it. And we want your help.
What I just heard is that grant writers have to be really good editors too. 500 characters. That's amazing.
Sometimes it's 500 characters. Sometimes it's 10,000 characters. And then you have to, it's.
But I think what you're getting at is something that encompasses beyond the world of grants for organizations, is how you're turning this into a we. Mm-hmm. How we can all come together and do our work together, and what that looks like. We're hearing from organizations when we're working with them on their fundraising events. We often have a moment in the program where they're telling their organizational story, sort of that, here's everything in the kitchen sink that we do, and here's the impact we have, right? And we find a really impactful vehicle for doing that is what we call the org video. It's a great way to get a diversity of voices, multimedia. As soon as we turn on a screen, different parts of the brain lights up. You have all the theatrical elements
Music.
of music and
Images.
controlled narration and images and all that. And we've started to hear organizations that when we are helping them produce their org video, they are also thinking about it for grant applications. Can you talk about the use of video in grant applications and how that looks now?
Absolutely.
It's this season is the first time I've
Yeah.
started to hear about that from organizations.
Interesting. A lot of foundation grants will have a place in their portal that says optional, other information. And I always attach a link to a video of my clients that have an organizational
Yeah.
video.
Yeah.
Just because it is another way to engage. And people who are reading your grant applications, they have different learning styles, right?
Yep.
And so reading the words on a page, maybe they'll click the link and they'll learn more, and maybe they'll engage more. Maybe they won't. I will say I would not yet, maybe in the future this will happen, but I would not create a brand new video
Right.
for a grant application unless they specifically ask for it. I think a 3 to 5 minute organizational video that goes along with your mission. It's maybe tied to the project that you're trying to accomplish through the grant, and can show off some of the work that you do, because it's not, you can't bring donors or grant readers always to your organization or
Right.
show them exactly what you're doing. And this is just such a great way to do that. But it's an extra, right? It's a
Yeah.
garnish. It's not necessarily everything that you're telling them. You still need to follow,
Yeah.
all their guidelines and the things that they request. So it's extra. It's beautiful. And I always do it when I have the opportunity to, definitely.
That's great. I think a lot of people are seeing the opportunity of investing in a piece that could have multiple functions for them. And I think we're finally hearing that utilizing that as a way to tell part of their story in a different way during the grant process is one way they're thinking about it.
Yeah.
Not that they're specifically sort of driving toward one or the other, but that if they're putting the resource into this video,
We could reuse
are
it.
there ways
Yeah.
that it can take their story in other venues for funding?
So Susan just said that the video is being used as a garnish, which immediately reminded me of an experience that we just had. Susan, we were at, there's a list that just came out from, I think it's Forbes, of the top 50 bars in North America. And we got invited by a friend of ours.
She likes where this is
I
going.
know. We got invited with a friend of ours to have drinks at one of the bars. And it stood out as a lovely experience, but nothing that was like, wow, I wonder what makes them unique. And then we went to another one on the list. And this bar, their unique standout was that they had a director of garnish. And their garnishes were incredible. Like, we had a garnish that was like potato chip cut to look like a rooster with chili salt on it to like give it texture and color. And I mean, this was like, oh, this is the standout, right? This is what made them really competitive in the landscape of the bar experience. So when you said it was a garnish, I immediately thought, okay, well, what else do you do to stand out? Like, how do you, in your grant application process, stand out? And how competitive is the grant application world when you're being forced into 500 characters in a portal, right? Like, how do you sort of make what you're doing unique to the review committee?
Yeah. Oh gosh, that's a tough question too, because it is tough to stand out, because nonprofits are doing such amazing work. Your application's sitting on a stack, you're competing with these other organizations that are also so important. They're so needed. They're serving people and the world in really special and powerful ways too, right? And you want everyone to succeed. And so do the readers. The readers want everyone to be able to to succeed. So it makes it really hard. I think that there are a number of ways that you can stand out. And I think using really intentional language, as I sort of talked a little bit about before, there are ways that you can say the amazing work that our organization does, right? You could some folks start out their grants with, our organization started out in 1938 and we do X, Y, and Z for 1,000 people a year. And then there's other organizations who say, this is the difference we are making. This is the problem we're solving. It is so compelling. And here's how we're doing this, right? So those words really matter.
Yeah.
I sort of think about, maybe this is snarky, but I think about some grant language as, you're going to an Italian restaurant, right? You can either get served SpaghettiOs. Some people love SpaghettiOs, okay? Or you can get served spaghetti a la carbonara. And it's basically the same thing, right? You're at an Italian restaurant, you're having spaghetti, but one makes you feel a certain way and one tastes a certain way. And which one in the end is, going to get the rave reviews? And some funders don't want Italian food anyway, so they're not going in that direction, right? So move on, go to your other options. But I do think you have to be really intentional with those things and think about, that's part of it. You asked how competitive
I was going to
writing
ask.
is right now. It's I've been doing this for 20 years, and I have to say I've never seen the grant world so competitive right now. There's just so much need. There's a lot of factors that have led to that. They've created a lot of these pressure points that are really putting a lot of pressure on nonprofits, but also on philanthropic organizations as well. And it really started with the pandemic. I could get really high level. Do you want me to go there?
Yeah.
Just go really high level for a minute. I have some experience with organizational trauma. And so when I think about the pandemic as this collective trauma, right, that we all experienced, there's just some natural stages that occur in communities and organizations and in people that follow trauma. So they're nuanced, they're complex, they're nonlinear, but ultimately those stages of growth after trauma lead to communities rebuilding and ultimately thriving again. But you sort of have to work your way through all of these sometimes, icky steps that come after that. So we saw after the pandemic, there was this heroic effort, right, to take care of nonprofits. The philanthropy sector stepped up. Everyone stepped up to help each other. It was really, really amazing and heartening, taking care of our friends, our neighbors, our communities, the people we serve. But this collective emergency sort of faded away, but those needs didn't. Right? All those needs have stayed in place for a lot of communities and a lot of folks that we serve in the nonprofit sector. And at the same time, we saw this great resignation. People were getting so burned out. They were so ready to take a break. It's just meant this massive turnover, not only in the nonprofit world and obviously the workforce in general everywhere, but the philanthropy world has experienced that as well, which means the grant making side and the grant receiving side have all had this huge shift. And a lot of those folks, as you all know, maybe haven't ever been in development before. And so there's not a lot of this natural mentorship and these relationships that happen. It was sort of wiped out, and we're kind of starting from scratch in a lot of ways.
Interesting.
Which creates a lot of opportunity, right? Because we can think of new ways to do things. We can start again, but it just takes a long time. That's created all this churn, all this newness. The opportunity is there, but it just takes a little while to get there. So, the other part of this too is that inflation is real. Nonprofits, these needs, as I said, have stayed really high, but also nonprofits are having to serve more clients a lot of times than they were pre-pandemic, but also they need to pay their employees more, right? Because we have to be able to buy milk and bread. We have to catch up. We have to pay our bills. So all of those things have led to this extremely high need for funding, right? Because we have to pay our people and we have to serve our clients, and we need more than we did before because of that. But everybody else does too. So it's created this huge need that's only gotten greater. And it's been really hard for the philanthropy world to keep up, right? They have limited resources too. And I'm hearing from them that they're seeing these massive numbers of applications that they weren't seeing before.
Yeah. Interesting.
So it's made it a really different funding landscape than it used to be.
I'm hearing, I want to pull a couple of threads through for our fundraising superheroes out there listening who are thinking about pouring their second martini at this point, right? Because I think in a good, these are all truths, right? This is all the water we're all swimming in. And I think sometimes all of those elements together can be like, cool, what do I do, right? So I think what I want to do, though, is I want to pull through what you said earlier, and it was quick and in passing, but really, really make it central, that grants should be part of your fundraising strategy. They should not be your fundraising strategy in its entirety. Because when that happens and you're one of those 50 really, really qualified applications sitting on a table somebody is choosing between and you don't get chosen, that means you can't do work. So how do you build a program for your fundraising where this is one piece, and should that not come through, let's say it's come through before and there's some hard decisions that have to get made and it doesn't come through, that you have these other avenues you can turn the volume up on for a little while until how do you build an ecosystem so that it isn't a house of cards? And that has always been true, but I think it is becoming more and more evident for people that there are things you can't control. So if you can't control the fact that this is a sector in evolution and funding is getting even harder and harder, how do you do the best you can to make those grant applications and to change some of your language so that you don't lead with, we are a 501c, how do we start with, we believe, or this is the amazing stuff we're doing, we can all solve this together. How do you do what you can do in that? But then how do you know that some of it's not you?
Right.
Some of it is a symptom of what's happening, and how do you go and continue the relationship work that you should be doing to be able to amplify the other pieces. So I just want to sort of figure out how we continue to spin this into a space where people go, cool, okay, it's not just me. We keep getting no's on grants. It's not us. It's not just us. We're talking about a whole sector in flux, and that competitiveness is real for everybody.
Well, and it goes back to where Susan started about relationships, and that's at the crux of all fundraising. But I want to make sure we talk to some folks that are newer in the grant space. So we're going to take a short promotional break, and when we come back, Susan, I want to get your thoughts on advice you have for folks new to grant writing. We'll be right back.
Loving the fundraising elevator, but wondering how you can talk to Sam and Kristen? Well, now's your chance to do it. Book one-on-one consulting time with Swaim Strategies experts Sam, Kristen, and Mary, and get all your event questions answered. Our team has you covered on strategic planning, fundraising strategy, storytelling, data tools, and registration support. Get the tools and the help you need to make the most impact at your fundraising event. Book at elevatenonprofit.com. The link is also in our show notes.
Welcome back. We are here with Susan Taylor, a longtime friend and an expert in the grant space, talking about grants and what the landscape looks like, how you can impact it, and what that can look like. So we were talking before the break about the sector, nonprofit sector in flux in general, and there being a lot of new folks to the sector. So let's say I am a first-time grant writer. Good on me, good on me, good on me, right? But I think there's merit in understanding the process.
Yeah.
When you go to write that grant. Are there opportunities to be part of a review panel or a peer review process so that you can understand granting from the other side so that you can put that to work for yourself and your organization?
Yes.
Love it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, honestly, when I have reviewed other people's grants, that has been the best way for me to improve my skills as a grant writer, because not only do I understand what really compelling grants look like, but also the headspace that you're in as a grant reviewer. Sometimes your time is limited, you have limited information, you are using a scoring rubric that is complicated, or you're given instructions about what specifically gets more points. Sometimes you get tired when you're reading. Reviewers are humans, right?
Yeah.
They're not robots. Reviewers come in with their own understanding of your topic or not. So I think that's a great way to do it. State and federal agencies offer the opportunity to apply to become a reviewer.
Oh.
So if you are in the arts space, you can go to your state arts organization and find someone that you can just email and ask, hey, can I be a grant reviewer for your organization? And especially if you have experience in that field, oftentimes they will absolutely say yes, because they need people with that experience and understanding to help them make those decisions.
Yeah.
It is a volunteer role, so I will
Sure.
explain that too.
Yeah.
But it does help you build your skills as a grant writer. If that is not an option for new grant writers, there are plenty of opportunities for you to find successful grant applications. And the network of grant writers and fundraisers is so helpful. People want to help each other. And grant writers know there are not enough grant writers in the sector right now. So, us more seasoned grant writers are certainly looking to build up our area of expertise with newcomers into grant writing, because we need more people with the skills and the desire to do this kind of work. The Grant Professionals Association is a great place for this. If you join as a member, they have a repository of lots and lots of successful grants that you can review. It's really, really helpful. And, as I said before, it's really helpful to just put yourself in that reviewer headspace, right?
Yep.
Think about
Yeah.
having this stack of grants that you have to read, you have to make decisions. They're all good.
Right.
All of them are good. So how do you decide?
Yep.
And a lot of times for a family foundation or philanthropic organization, they have to go back to the roots of the donor's intent.
Yep.
Right?
Right.
So which grant applications, which organizations speak to that donor's intent
Yeah.
in the most specific way? So I think that's really important to understand too. you can write an amazing, amazing grant, and you can have a wonderful organization, a compelling program, and you still might not get funded.
Yeah.
And I don't always, but oftentimes I will go back to a foundation if we get a no, and I will ask, hey, do you have any feedback for us? We
That's
got a
valuable.
no, or we got a couple of no's, and I just don't, I have a blind spot with this set of clients, or I have a blind spot with this topic. What are your reviewers saying that we need to address the next time?
Yeah.
And it's so powerful. It's so helpful. That's what I would suggest. And just, you're gonna get no's. You're gonna
Be
get
prepared
no's.
for the no.
Be prepared for it, and it's okay.
Yeah.
I mean, there will be more grant applications. There will be more funding opportunities. There will always be more money that is available to your organization. I think that's just important to think about, is people want to help, and you have to ask. And that is part of why diversifying those resources is so, so important, because you have grants, you have major donors, you have events, you have your annual gifts. All of these things are going to shift around. It's like your investment portfolio
Right.
at different points in time. Something might fall out the bottom. One of your major donors, things happen. So it's just really important to keep those diversified resources, keep those relationships going with foundations, submit your grant reports, things like that are always, keep people engaged.
Yep.
And foundations are made up of people who are donors, and some are volunteers, but they all care about the nonprofit sector, and they want success. They want to see you succeed. They want to be part of your mission. And this isn't an adversarial relationship, right? This isn't us versus them and philanthropy, this is a partnership. We're working together. We all have the same goals. So I think those things are really important to think about too, because the process of starting grant writing seems very intimidating to a lot of folks.
Yeah.
But it's an iterative process, right? You start, you try it out. You're probably not going to be perfect the first time, just like you probably didn't sit on a bike for the first time when you were a kid and immediately, ride your bike 2 miles. You had to learn.
Yeah.
And that's okay. There's some excitement and fun and beauty in that learning of how to do something too.
Well,
you give yourself grace.
You just tapped into two things that I want to circle back on, because one of the things that you said is submit your grant review or submit your reports afterwards. And I actually have worked with development professionals that had no idea of the importance of that element. And so the grant report usually has a requested timeline to it from the philanthropy organization that submitted the grant. But the idea is that if a granting organization is giving to you, they're giving because they see that you can make their vision of the world possible, that you are a piece of their vision. And they want to know what the result of that was, right? It's like if you were to spend a ton of time prepping for something and never see the end result. This granting organization and the volunteer grant reviewers have put a ton of time and effort into reading all these grants and identifying what are the grants that are going to help with our vision of the world. And then they want to know if it manifested. They want to know if it had impact out there. And I think that the report is something that's overlooked with a lot of philanthropy. It's overlooked with our major donors. It's overlooked after an event. It's overlooked with our corporate
loop,
sponsors.
Y'all. We just want to be in a feedback loop together. That's it. Again, it's at its most base level.
We want to be a part of it.
We want to be a part of something.
Yeah. But the other thing that you tapped into is the intentionality of language. And whether you know that you tapped into this or not, you gave sort of a mini tutorial on Simon Sinek's Golden Circle of Why. And Simon Sinek's Golden Circle of Why is that our brain has different areas where we process. We process what, we process how, and we process why. But we make decisions from the belief center of our brain, which is where we process why. So if you are speaking to your what, we're a 501c3 nonprofit. We serve kindergarten through 12th grade. We're serving 4,000 families. That's your what. But if you say that we believe that every child in our community deserves an opportunity to thrive, or we are supporting every child in our community having the opportunity to thrive, you're talking to why language, to belief language. And that intentionality of choice helps people come along on the journey further. It is so easy to tap out when you hear, we're a nonprofit with all these analytics behind who we serve and what we do. And that intentionality of language around impact and belief can be so powerful and is something we integrate a lot into events, into the storytelling of events. But for that, like, first time, I've never written a grant before. I'm sitting down to write a grant. What is something you wish you knew when you first started writing grants that you know now, or just seems maybe obvious to you now? Any tip?
She says with a knowing chuckle.
Well, I wish actually that I had the courage to say no more often to my bosses or to whoever was asking. You know, grants are not the answer to every problem you have.
Yeah.
You know, they don't fit every funding opportunity. You can't just, get a grant for that. It doesn't really work like that. And sometimes your organization is just not ready. Right? And don't keep trying to push a square peg through a round hole. It's just sometimes you're not ready to apply or you don't have time. Just move on, take a breath. There will always be more. There will be more opportunities. Things will come around again. So I think that for me, I spent a lot of weekends, trying to meet deadlines. I missed my son's birthday one day. I had a federal grant due the next day, and I hadn't gotten the information in from the people I was working with. And I, spent the whole day trying to put this thing together. And I just regretted that so much. Life comes before grants.
Life before grants.
Life before grants. So I think, in the same vein, I really wish I had started tracking my time by project before. I didn't do that for like 18 years. Actually, Sam, you were the one who encouraged me to start doing that when I started consulting. And I hadn't considered before the amount of time that it would take me to do any specific project. And now I know. Now I know, and I can say, I do or I don't have time to complete this project for you, because that Department of Labor grant will take me between 100 and 130 hours to write. And I don't have that much time between now and the deadline in 4 weeks.
Right.
So things like that, I just did not realize how impactful and important that would be, just for figuring out all of the aspects of all of my projects and how I put work together. So now I can just sort of confidently predict how much time things are going to take.
Well, and that's such a great place to say no from.
Yeah. Understanding that.
For our nonprofit folks who have someone perhaps with authority coming to them saying, this grant, we have to apply.
And by the way, it's due tomorrow.
And by the way, but that becomes a realistic conversation.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I hear that. That grant's going to take 50 hours. I need to free up 50 hours between now and then to do that. So let's talk about return on investment. What does that at 50 hours actually cost us in salary time and diminished returns on these other things I'm not able to do? Like, data is super powerful
it is.
for folks in those decision-making moments. And I think it helps everybody get on the same page.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize that. That grant is for $2,000.
Right.
So let's go have a conversation with a major donor for an hour-long coffee meeting.
Right.
Different, right? Like, we can start to figure out where we actually want to invest that time.
Yeah, agree. Are there things that you would recommend always or never including in a grant application? Like, sort of two sides of the coin. Is there something that you always include or that you just say, warning, stay away from?
Okay.
Get real. This is the real talk.
I'm going to say something that probably everyone's going to roll their eyes at, but I have to say it. I have to, because cannot tell you how many grants I've seen that did not follow the directions, y'all. Follow the directions.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that's ridiculous advice, but you can have, the directions, and then there's also the foundation's priorities and guidelines.
Yes.
You need to make sure if you're applying for this grant, you are following their priorities and guidelines, and you are following their instructions that they have asked for. You can have the most compelling, brilliant idea, the most wonderful organization. You're impacting so many things. But if your cause does not align with their focus areas, move on. Move on. Find someone else who's a better match. And when it comes to the grant instructions, just answer the questions that they have asked for. Again, it sounds obvious, but be explicit in your language, and use plain language. Don't try and get jargony or use language that people in your specific world know what that means. The readers might not be from your world. They might not know what your acronyms mean. And that's just an immediate turnoff, right? If you have no idea what is even happening just out of the gate in a grant. So I try and use a strengths-based approach in writing too, which means, using positive language. It's inclusive. We talk about great things, and we don't say anything negative about other organizations that might be doing similar work or, work in other communities. Just stay away from that. Again, I wouldn't say it if I didn't feel like I had to say it, because sometimes you read these things and you're like, wow, what? You really woke up on the wrong side of the bed. Maybe you should not have chosen today to write your grants. And I'm serious. When that happens to me, I do not write a grant on those days.
Yeah.
I really don't. If I'm in a sad mood or a bad mood, just, take a nap and wait until tomorrow.
We work a lot in the corporate side of things, like corporate sponsorship and philanthropy, because of the fact that events are often funded by corporate partners. And we had a corporate partner tell us once, it is my job to give you money. Like, I am trying to give away this money. But when I have hundreds of requests coming in, sometimes I just need a filter that isn't a value around the organization's mission. It is simply a filter for me to narrow the field. And if you have used sir, but I'm a woman reading, or if you have spelled my name wrong or the name of my organization wrong, it's an easy way for me to, off the top, just narrow the field. So to the idea of not following the directions, if you didn't follow the directions, that becomes an easy way to narrow yourself out. I said, that's great advice, even though someone might roll their eyes at it.
It's true. There are a lot of big conversations happening in the sector.
Yeah.
Trust-based philanthropy, operational funding versus program funding, community-centric fundraising, all of these pieces, I think, are integral as things continue to evolve and as we continue to intersect in all parts of the sector. Where do you think from your vantage point, where do things stand right now in the philanthropic sector around some of those pieces, and how are they showing up in grants?
You know, that's so interesting because we've just been on this roller coaster for the
Yeah.
last couple of years, right? As we talked about the pandemic and how funding priorities have shifted. You know, it seemed like trust-based philanthropy, which is hard to
It's
say,
super
It
hard
is
to
hard to
say. I just
say.
bumbled it.
was was it was a big topic around the
Yeah.
pandemic, right? Because a lot of organizations had to pivot the work that they were doing
Yeah.
Yeah.
to really meet the needs of their clients and the folks that they serve, and to make the difference in the way that actually needed to happen as
Yep.
opposed to what they had predicted. Right? Because the other thing is a grant is it's a hypothesis too, right? This
Right.
is our hypothesis. If we create this project or this program with your support, this is the outcomes that we're hoping will happen, right? And it goes
Yeah.
back to that feedback loop,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
So with trust-based philanthropy, that was this huge topic around 2020. And a lot of philanthropic organizations shifted their giving to be more general operating funds. So they are telling their nonprofits, we trust you. We know your mission is important. And we trust that you will use the resources we give you to fulfill your mission in the ways that you see are the most important.
Yeah.
Which was amazing. I mean, so many organizations really needed that flexibility, which is great. And I have seen that stick
Great.
more
Good.
Yeah.
with a lot of philanthropic organizations, but not all of them. You know, a lot of them have embraced that temporarily, and then for whatever reason, went back to project-based funding
Yep.
post-COVID, which is their prerogative to do so. You know, it felt a little clunky maybe to go back to that for some, but some funders want to see their funding going to something more specific, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, if you think about getting a $5,000 grant or a $10,000 grant, and it goes into your big pot of $1 million annual budget, they want to see, well, what exactly did you do with that? Or how did our money that we worked really hard for, how did that
Yeah.
actually make a difference
Yep.
for your organization? And I totally get that too. I mean, if you think about donors, a lot of times want to see that too. So one thing, you know, we've talked a little bit about this, but one thing I've also noticed is just how insanely competitive in the last 5 years things have gotten.
Yeah.
It's not a given that you submit a grant and you will get it. It's changed a lot. And a lot of foundation program officers have told me they are getting twice as many applications as they got in 2022.
Wow.
Some say 3 times more, some say 4 times more. And
Wow.
some of them are cutting off their annual giving by July, August, September because they've given out all their funding
of
for
it.
the year.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
So it's just gotten really, really challenging for everyone. I think that's why, you know, those relationships are so important, and why partnerships with other
Yep.
nonprofits and other organizations is so important too. If you can, you know, expand your work by leveraging other resources,
Yeah.
leveraging your partners, combining the work that you're doing with others, not only is that saving money and it's expanding your mission, but you're also showing funders we know how to play well.
Yeah.
We can play nice with others, and your funding will go farther because we are all moving in the same direction together
Yep.
with the other folks in our community.
It's a cool opportunity for amplification.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Both for the funder, but I also think for organizations, I think some people go, yeah, I got time for that work. But it's an interesting space. It's an interesting
Well,
space
so
to
often
think
we're
about.
already collaborating in the sector, and
Yes.
then to realize, oh, we can apply for a grant based on that.
Yes.
And increase our odds of the grant.
Exactly.
Well, we're going to take a short promotional break, and when we come back, we're going to jump in the fundraising elevator. We'll be right back with Susan Taylor.
At Elevate, we believe in bringing people together. Our online learning platform for fundraising events has webinars, workshops, downloadable tools, and more, designed to save you time and stress when planning your next event. We're getting nonprofit, development, and event planning professionals the tools and ideas they need to create events that inspire donors and raise more money. So join us at elevatenonprofit.com. The link is also in our show notes.
All right, we are here with Susan Taylor with Grant Lab, and we're going to hop into the fundraising elevator. Susan, we close every show by asking our guests about 2 questions having to do with heading up in the fundraiser to the penthouse where the party is, and heading down to the basement in the boiler room where the tools are. So if you want to join us in the elevator, I want to head up to the party and ask you, is there an event or a party that you went to that was memorable, and what made it memorable for you?
Well, I love going to parties. I love going to galas. I love getting dressed up. I love talking to strangers, which I know is super weird, but I love
It's not
doing
weird at
that.
all.
I hate planning events, but I like because I want to go and I want to flit around and talk to everyone. I love that. But probably my favorite event in recent years was my parents' 50th anniversary party.
Oh, so good.
Actually, it was just in their backyard. But it was such a fun time. We had people who had come in from all over the country, ages 5 to 95. There was a band, and they had kept the little wedding cake topper from their wedding cake in
Awesome.
1969, which was so cute. And, my family just has so much fun together. We just laugh and, we danced and we had, lime green punch, and it was just fun. We all, we had as much fun actually setting up for the party as we did at the party. There were
Perfect.
20 people in the kitchen, and we're putting together appetizer trays and flowers and being silly, and it was just
Joy.
really fun.
That's great.
It was joy. I mean, I think the memorable part of it was just we genuinely love being together and enjoy each other's company. And it was really, really fun.
That's awesome.
I think sometimes that's underrated at events. People get so mixed into their event details that we miss the joy and like, well, where's the moment where we actually enjoy the party and have a good time together? So I think that's a really important lesson. Now let's head down to the basement and find tools. What is a tool you would recommend for a grant writer? What is something that a fundraiser should have in their toolkit as they are preparing for a grant process?
I'm gonna throw a really weird one at you.
Yeah, I like
Can
weird
I do
ones.
that?
Of
Yes,
course.
please. Always.
Something that I think is really important for every fundraiser to understand is their own personal money stories.
Yes.
Oh, that's not weird at all. That's really good.
Yeah, I think that our internal belief system
Yeah.
around how we think about wealth or money or philanthropy, giving, receiving, all of those things are tied so deeply to our unconscious biases.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's so interesting, and it really impacts the way we lead in our organizations, the way we communicate with others, the way we interact with donors and with each other. And I just think those beliefs are sometimes so deeply held that we think of them as truths
Yes.
Yeah.
when they are actually not at all.
Yeah.
And I think really unpacking that internally helps us expand our hearts and our mindsets to giving and receiving and being part of this ecosystem of care for all of our communities. And I think that that for me has made a huge difference in the way that I personally can interact with donors and other nonprofits and foundations and philanthropic organizations.
That's such good advice.
I think it's brilliant. I think it leads to expectation.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes that can become dangerous water to swim in when we sort of, like you said, they become, we miscategorize them as truths, and then we use them to sort of create some expectations around behavior, around philanthropy, around our donors, around our funders, and those we're receiving grants from. So I think I love that. That's a really good one. We want folks to get a hold of you because you're brilliant. So how do they do that?
Well, I'm really bad with social media.
It's okay.
Embarrassing, y'all. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
But I have an email and I have a website. The website is thegrantlab.com. And you can always email me at susan@thegrantlab.com. I love hearing from folks. I genuinely, just like I love going to a party and talking to strangers, I love when people reach out and email me and tell me about the work they're doing or their organization. And sometimes I have something that would be really interesting or helpful to help them with. They don't have to be my client for me to talk with them, but I really love learning about different nonprofits and the work that folks are doing. So yeah, absolutely. Anyone reach out. I'd love to hear from folks.
Awesome. You heard it here first.
Yep.
Susan's ready to talk to you about grants. So thegrantlab.com, we will put that in the show notes. I hope everyone checks it out because I think that it's always so valuable just to have insights and resource and someone as experienced as you helping with such a sort of process for organizations. Thank you for sharing today and thank you for joining us. We're so glad to have you with us and we hope you have a great day.
Thank you all so much. I always love talking with you, and it was absolutely my pleasure to be here.
Thanks for all you do.
Bye.
The Fundraising Elevator is produced in partnership with Swaim Strategies at the studios of the AV Department. The program is produced by April Clark and directed by Steve Osborne, with audio engineering and original music by Dwayne Anderson and Heidi Christensen. Video production by Chris Peterson, Whitney Gomes, and Nathan Bouquet. Video editing by Steve Osborne, graphic design by Pendulum Creative Group, and support from Sophia Keller, John Lyles, and Andy Dowsett. The Fundraising Elevator is recorded at the AV Department in Portland, Oregon. For years, they've been our trusted partner, delivering exceptional audio-visual production and videography for nonprofits. In 2020, they transformed into a dynamic live streaming studio, producing more than 900 virtual and hybrid events. Now, we embark on an exciting journey together to bring you this podcast. Seeking the best in live events, video production, and live streaming? We proudly recommend our friends at the AV Department. Link in the episode description.